Hi and good evening, everyone. My name's Albert, and this is VlogsBoutNothin. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy night to join me. I really appreciate that. And so, hey, listen, as I fix my belts, I was dropping off applications, and now that I'm middle aged, I tuck in my shirt. It's one of those things. It's like the boys' club. I was just talking about this. It's like when you get to a certain age, you gotta tuck the shirt in. I mean, again, I don't know. I didn't write the rules, and again, it's not like it's more classy. You feel me? Like it don't even matter what type of tea it is. Like you don't gotta get all fancy with it. It's just tuck it in. I don't know. I'm getting older and say old man stuff sometimes. I also like suspenders. But tonight in particular, I want to talk about something that I've not heard many people talk about as it concerns their own POV or like their own experience with it IRL. But what I'm talking about is the difference between being Mexican and being Hispanic. Now, this is not at any risk of sounding racist or discriminatory in any kind of a way because, one, I'm a social capitalist who believes in equality amongst all ethnicities, cultural groups, and just I'm pro Homo sapien. You feel me? I'm very much into basic to just human rights. But there is a difference between being Mexican and being Hispanic. I know this because I'm seventh generation New Mexican, right? And when I say that, I mean that like my family was here like way before New Mexico was a state, meaning that, the place that I live in became a state in 1912. Okay, I'm not sure when it was declared a territory. I want to say 1888. I probably am wrong. This is an impromptu speech. I'm not entirely fluent with 100% remembrance of all historical state data here, but I do know that it's a fact that in 1912 New Mexico became a state, so just about a little over 100 years ago. So, I mean, my grandmother just recently passed away in 2023 of October, so just almost a year ago now, right on my birthday. And so at the age of 86, she was just her parents, my great grandparents were like born in New Mexico, the territory. You know what I mean? Not New Mexico, the state. So there's an interesting cultural heritage and diversification of ethnic groups here in northern New Mexico in particular. Now, this is as a result of predominantly first generation Spaniards, mixing with local populations, and often those local populations being of sovereign race and or ethnicity, such as tribes and such as Mexican Americans, or what at that time would be New Mexican Americans. In that New Mexico was, if you look at old maps, I think as big as all the way up to Oregon. Like it was a really, really big territory when I believe it was seceded. Not entirely sure as to the historical accuracy of all of the things that I'm saying, which is why there's such a grain of salt on it. But what I'm trying to get at is that because of all of those things I just talked about, there's a difference in the modern contemporary perspective of someone who identifies as Mexican or Hispanic. In that, like, if you're not from New Mexico, you would assume that. I don't know what people assume. One, most people don't even know that it's a state. It's kind of sad. I've been in many places all over the country, all through my life, where people really have a hard time understanding that New Mexico is a state located within the United States of America. And again, I mean, no fault to their own. It's not like it's been around even just longer than about 100 years. So, I mean, unless people were like real in tune with their history books, and I bet the boomers and Xers had history books that maybe didn't even recognize this place as a state yet, honestly. You feel me? So, like, I don't know. I mean, there were barely textbooks that recognized Alaska and Hawaii's entry into the United States of America. I believe in 1948 is when they were both admitted, the last two states to have been admitted into our union. I'm obviously been a lifelong fan of becoming Puerto Rico becoming a state, but that will never happen because Puerto Rico is a tax haven for all of the rich Americans who live on the mainland, as they call it, right? And so while Puerto Rico suffers, a bunch of rich people are able to take advantage of zero income tax and move their operation of business there. I mean, it is what it is, but at like the local government there should allow entry into the union based upon the simple fact that its citizens would then qualify for a bunch more benefits as they'd then be legally recognized citizens of the United States of America, and they wouldn't, not get the benefits and just offer benefits to rich people who can afford to exploit them. I just think that's kind of weird. But like the difference between being Mexican and Hispanic is how many generations you are removed from where you are and where you come from as it concerns like geographically speaking in a world of arbitrary borders. First and second generation people that were born in Mexico have a different culture than northern New Mexicans who identify as Hispanic. So I have a Spanish father and a white mother. I feel like I am a second generation Hispanic, typically because my mom would be like the first generation Hispanic as it concerns like her parents. You know what I mean? Because like my mom doesn't come from two white parents, right? She like my grandma is she was, rest in peace, Priscilla. Just she reminded me of Betty Crocker. She was the coolest lady ever. But so like earlier I'm walking and the neighbors are talking to me and the guy asks me, he's like, dude, do you make adobo or do you make empanadas? And it's interesting because, while we speak Spanish, I speak Spanish, I'm Hispanic, Northern New Mexicans are very different. We're very different Hispanics. We're very different people in that we're kind of like white people, but then like we have an influence on like cherry picking Spanish culture both from Spain and Mexico. So it's like cherry picking cultures, making it our own culture, and all while acting very culturally white as it concerns, the state is a swing state. It'll probably be a red state this year. I hope that it's not. But historically, in the few elections that New Mexico has been a part of in the last century, it is a swing state. But there's a lot of very conservative values. Hispanics are very conservative people. And so, arguably, like, are Mexicans, honestly, in that regard, in my opinion, in that, like, Hispanics are predominantly Catholic. A lot of Hispanics identify as, moreover, specifically Roman Catholic. I find that very interesting, and that I feel like is more Spanish influenced from, Europe or Spain, in that, like, that's where that comes from. Um, I know that there's just a difference between, and so when the guy asked me about adobo and empanadas, I've never made an empanada in my life, and I don't even know what adobo is. I mean, again, and that's weird because I'm Spanish, I'm Hispanic. You'd think that one kind of Spanish is the same kinds of all Spanish, but it's not. And that's interesting because there are many different kinds of ethnic Spanish groups all over the world. And similar to, Europeans in their sort of conquest to colonize, the Spaniards are, just as successful, arguably, as Great Britain and the United Kingdom and France and those parts of Europe that have, again, for all intents and purposes, um, kind of enslaved the modern world in that its current formation is entirely influenced upon European and Spaniard settlement, across into the Western Hemisphere of the Americas, and namely eradicating, one could argue, all of the sovereign population, the indigenous population that was located within these sovereign borders before the exploits of the Spaniards and the Europeans, you know? So, like, there's some real heavy history behind being a Hispanic, you know? I mean, in Mexico, I'd argue that at least as a Mexican, a real cool thing about identifying with your culture is that it is confined and it is a national culture that is nationalized through the representation of state, public, private, and religion, you know? So, like, being Mexican is a cool thing. You feel me? Like, that's a whole vibe. Like, that's a whole culture. That's a whole nation. That's a whole different kinds of Mexicans, you know? Just like there's different kinds of Americans. But I just find it interesting that so many people here in Albuquerque, especially that come from different places, because most of the people here haven't been here very long, honestly. They've not been here. You know, their parents aren't from here, their grandparents aren't from here. And as I get older, I see that, you know, local people become fewer and far between, in that it's such a nice little retirement spot up here that many people find it, you know, attractive for some reason. I guess you'd find it attractive if the cost of living was appropriate for you and you wanted to do nothing, you know, because that's basically what Albuquerque is, you know, a big retirement town that's nationalized with all of the governmental jobs and private sector jobs that aren't easy to get into and require a life of servitude that some of us aren't willing to provide, as it concerns either Uncle Sam or, you know, Uncle Trevino at Intel in Sandia. You know, I don't know. I mean, I talked about this earlier, but again, those jobs, you know, they don't allow Mary Jane. So, I mean, I guess I've been out of the employment potential pool for all my life, you know, and I'm okay with that. So I hope that you guys have a really good night, and thanks again for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. All right, bye.